My name is Pauline Marsh. I'm 31 years old, and last Saturday night, my boyfriend announced to a backyard full of people that I was temporary. He didn't use that exact word, of course. Daniel is more subtle than that. But sometimes, when someone is drunk enough and proud enough, the truth slips out between the jokes. I live in a mid-sized city, work in project management for a healthcare software company, and until a week ago, I thought my life was pretty stable. Not exciting, not terrible, just fine. I had a boyfriend, a shared apartment, a friend group, a routine. I didn't realize that what I actually had was a 3-year audition for a role I was never going to get. The story really starts at my best friend Mike's engagement party. Mike and I met in college. He's one of those people who somehow managed to grow up without getting jaded. His fiancée Emma is the same. Together, they're the kind of couple that makes you think, okay, maybe partnership can actually be safe. The party was in his parents' backyard. String lights woven through the trees, a rented arch with white flowers, a champagne tower glittering under the bulbs, the kind of warm, golden scene you'd see in a wedding Pinterest board. Daniel and I arrived late because he couldn't leave the office early again, even though we'd known about the party for months. He kissed my cheek in the car, checked his reflection in the rearview mirror twice, and said, "Let's try not to make tonight about us, okay?" At the time, I thought he meant he wanted the evening to be about Mike and Emma. Later, I realized he was just setting the stage in case I reacted badly to what he was about to do. We'd been together 3 years, living in what everyone called his apartment for 2. I'd heard that phrase so many times it barely registered anymore. "Are you going back to Daniel's place tonight? Wow, Daniel's apartment is so nice. He's really got it together, huh?" I always just smiled and nodded. Correcting people felt petty. And besides, what did it matter whose name was actually on the lease? I know, we'll get to that. The backyard was already crowded when we walked in. Laughter, music, the faint clink of glasses. Emma lit up when she spotted us, hugging me first, then Daniel. She smelled like vanilla and hairspray. "You made it," she said. "Drinks are over there. Mike's been pacing like a dad waiting in a hospital corridor." Daniel chuckled and slapped Mike on the back when we reached him. "Big day, man. You sure you're ready?" Mike grinned. "Absolutely." I remember watching the way Emma looked at him then. Steady, soft, like her whole body had exhaled into this choice. I felt a tiny ache that I ignored. Daniel headed straight for the champagne. I stuck to sparkling water. Someone needed to drive home. We drifted into separate conversations, me with some college friends, him with the louder crowd near the bar. Every now and then, I'd hear his laugh rise above the soundtrack. He's magnetic when he wants to be. People orbit him naturally. I used to find that charming. Lately, it had started to feel like standing in the shadow of someone else's spotlight. I was talking with an old roommate about her new job when I noticed a small circle forming around Daniel near the buffet, heads tilted toward him, shoulders shaking with laughter. His voice floated across the yard, louder than it needed to be. Emma's younger sister, Lily, appeared at my elbow. "Come here," she said, looping her arm through mine. "He's telling some story about a camping trip. It sounds hilarious." My stomach tightened. The camping trip. Last summer. We'd forgotten the air pump for the air mattress and ended up sleeping on the ground. It had been annoying, sure, but also kind of funny. We'd eaten granola bars in the dark and pretended we were contestants on some survival show. At least, that's how I remembered it. We squeezed into the circle just as the group erupted in laughter. "And she just lay there whining," Daniel was saying, doing this exaggerated, dramatic imitation of my voice. My back hurts," like I could magically conjure up a mattress out of pine needles. A few people glanced at me with quick, apologetic smiles when they noticed I'd joined the circle. Daniel didn't acknowledge me. He was in performance mode. "That's Pauline, though," he went on, gesturing vaguely in my direction with his half-empty glass. "Miss, it's a big deal when it's clearly not a big deal." The group chuckled, though the laughter was softer now. I smiled tightly. Daniel had been increasingly critical lately, but usually in private, delivered as feedback or constructive joking. Seeing it land in a ring of strangers' faces, watching them try to decide whether to laugh, it felt different, more real. "When are you two getting engaged?" someone asked suddenly. I didn't see who. The question just floated into the circle and hung there like fog. "You've been together almost as long as Mike and Emma, right?" Lily added, entirely innocently. There was a beat of silence. I opened my mouth to give our standard "we're in no rush" line. Daniel snorted champagne through his nose. "Oh, don't worry," he said loudly, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "I won't let her propose." A ripple of uneasy laughter. I could do so much better. And just like that, the air changed. The circle went quiet. Someone coughed. The hum of music and conversation from the rest of the yard suddenly sounded very far away. Daniel either didn't notice or pretended not to. He leaned in, conspiratorial, though his voice carried perfectly. Look, Pauline is... He made a vague up and down gesture at me. She's fine for now. Stable job, decent cook, not completely embarrassing in public, most of the time. Another forced chuckle. But long-term marriage material? Come on. Nobody laughed. I felt my face go hot, then strangely cold. My fingers went numb around my glass. He kept going. She's so unambitious it hurts. 3 years in the same position, no promotion, no real drive. Her salary's basically tapped out. And she's boring, guys, like stay in on a Saturday and watch documentaries about bridges boring. Lily flinched. One of my old friends stared at the ground. And don't get me started on her family, Daniel added, rolling his eyes. Her mom still calls her twice a week. Can you imagine those people as in-laws? Yikes. For a second, I was sure I'd misheard. My mother, who sends me soup recipes and reminds me to rest, weaponized as a punchline. Somewhere across the yard, I saw Mike freeze mid-conversation, his eyes tracking the silence at our circle. Emma's expression hardened. Anyway, Daniel said, finishing his drink with a flourish, I'm keeping my options open. Julia from marketing has been texting me and she's on track for regional manager. You know, real ambition. He winked at one of his friends. Julia. The name hit me with a dull thud. He'd mentioned her before, casually. She's cool, we vibe, he'd said. Don't be weird about it. My chest squeezed so tight I thought I might actually be having a heart attack. But beneath the humiliation, beneath the shock, something else stirred. Relief. Because in that moment, watching the disgusted pity on Emma's face and the way Lily's eyes shone with secondhand embarrassment, I realized something. This wasn't the first red flag, it was just the loudest one. 3 months earlier, I'd been walking past the bathroom when I heard Daniel's voice over the running shower. At first, I thought he was talking to me. Nah, I'm not staying with her long term, he'd said. Light, casual. I'm just waiting for bonus season. No point leaving money on the table. I stood there, one hand resting on the doorframe, listening to him describe me to his sister as a stepping stone, an interim situation, a placeholder. I didn't confront him that night. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I opened the drawer where we kept our lease documents. Despite living there for 3 years, despite everyone calling it Daniel's place, the lease had always been in one name, mine. I'd signed it before we started dating. I'd renewed it twice. The rent came out of my account. I'd even negotiated an early termination clause, almost as an afterthought. He had never bothered to read it. While he was planning his exit, I began to plan mine. Back in Mike's yard, Emma's sister touched my arm gently. Pauline. I looked at her, then at Daniel, who finally seemed to notice the silence, the way people's eyes no longer shone with amusement but with something like horror. I set my still full glass down on the nearest table. I think I need some air, I said calmly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't look at Daniel again. I walked across the yard, past the fairy lights and neatly arranged chairs, past the place where Mike had rehearsed his proposal speech the week before, past everything I thought my life was supposed to be. I let myself out through the side gate, the latch clicking softly behind me. Then I got in my car, pulled out of the driveway, and drove not home, but to the apartment that had always legally been mine. Only this time, I wasn't going back as his girlfriend. I was going back as the landlord he didn't know he had. If you'd asked any of our friends, they would have sworn the apartment belonged to Daniel. He curated that image carefully. Casual comments about my place, offering to host guys' nights, bragging about my landlord being chill. I used to think it was just ego. I didn't realize it was also rehearsal for an exit where he expected to walk away with the stage set, props included. When I pulled into the underground garage that night, my hands were steady on the wheel. My heart should have been racing. Instead, I felt like I was walking through a script I'd already read to the end. I parked in my usual spot, my spot, the one listed under my name on the lease, and just sat there for a moment, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. Upstairs in 4B, our life was still laid out exactly how he liked to tell the story. My place, our things, my future. He had no idea the story had already been rewritten. I took the elevator instead of the stairs, watching our blurred reflections in the mirrored walls, the Pauline who had arrived here 3 years ago, and the one who was leaving tonight. Same face, different spine. The hallway smelled faintly like someone's burnt dinner. A dog barked 2 doors down. It was all so aggressively normal that for one wild second I wondered if I was overreacting. Then I heard his voice in my head again. I'm just waiting for bonus season. No point leaving money on the table. Right. I unlocked the door to his place with my key. The apartment was quiet, dim, exactly as we'd left it. The couch he always face planted onto after work. The shelf of books I'd bought and he never touched. The framed print he insisted on hanging crooked because perfect is boring. I dropped my bag on the kitchen counter and walked straight to the hallway closet. That's where I kept the lease. 3 months ago. After overhearing his exit strategy, I'd pulled it out with shaking hands, not entirely sure what I was looking for, just certain I needed something solid, something real I could hold that wasn't his version of events. What I found was my own handwriting, my own signature, my name by itself on every line that mattered. Pauline Marsh, tenant. Not Pauline and Daniel, not co-lessees, just me. I'd signed the original lease before I ever met him. When it came up for renewal, he'd wave the envelope away. You're better with paperwork, he'd said, clicking through something on his laptop. Just tell me where to sign if I need to. He never needed to. That night, stunned and weirdly calm, I read every clause like my life depended on it. That's when I found it. Section 16B, the early termination option I'd negotiated when I first moved in because my company was notorious for sudden relocations. At the time, it was just practical. Now, it was a lifeline. I'd called the landlord the next morning. Stanley, a soft-spoken man in his 60s who'd inherited the building from his brother. I told him I was considering leaving early. I didn't commit to a date. I just asked questions. He reminded me of the penalty, 2 months' rent, and confirmed very clearly that as the sole leaseholder, I could terminate without anyone else's consent. I remember hanging up and staring at the wall, feeling the universe quietly hand me a key I hadn't realized I'd been asking for. From that moment on, the countdown started. I didn't storm out. I didn't scream. I didn't even treat Daniel differently. I went to work. I made dinner. I listened to his rants about lazy coworkers and incompetent managers. I nodded when he called me oversensitive for asking him to stop joking about my family. But in the background, I built an escape route. I started looking at listings on my lunch breaks. Quiet neighborhoods, decent light, month-to-month or one-year leases. Nothing dramatic, just mine. After about 2 months of casual searching, I found it. A small one-bedroom across town. Hardwood floors, a tiny balcony, a kitchen that wasn't as nice as ours, but felt honest somehow. No shared illusion attached. I signed the lease 3 weeks before Mike's engagement party. I scheduled a few furniture deliveries, basic things, a bed frame, a used sofa, a small table, choosing dates that were flexible because I didn't know exactly when I'd be moving. I just knew I would. Back in 4B, on the night of the party, I pulled my suitcase set out from under the bed. The sound of the wheels scraping against the frame was absurdly loud in the silence. I opened my wardrobe and started with the essentials: work clothes, jeans, sweaters, underwear. I folded each item carefully, the way my mom taught me when I moved into my first dorm room. It felt less like fleeing and more like reclaiming. I grabbed my important documents next: passport, birth certificate, bank records. I knew where everything was because I'd already done a practice run in my head a dozen times. Then the sentimental things: the photo of my parents and me at the beach, my grandmother's necklace, the battered paperback my best friend had given me in high school with notes in the margins. Everything went into 3 suitcases and 2 duffel bags. I moved quickly, but not frantically. There's a strange kind of peace that comes with finally acting on a decision you've already made in your heart. The TV stayed. The big, expensive coffee machine he loved stayed. The gaming console, the bar cart, the ridiculous neon sign he'd insisted on. Those were either his or jointly bought. I'd deal with that later, if at all. Once the last zipper closed, I walked into the living room and picked up my phone. I scrolled to Stanley, landlord. He answered on the second ring. Hello? Hi, Stanley. It's Pauline in 4B. Oh, yes, Pauline. Everything all right? His voice was warm, familiar. I imagined him in his little office down the street, surrounded by decades of keys and paper files. I'm calling to formally exercise the early termination clause, I said. My voice sounded oddly lawyerly. Section 16B. I'll pay the 2-month penalty, of course. All right, he said slowly. I heard the rustle of papers. We can process that. You'll need to sign a release form. When are you moving out? Tonight, I said. I'll send the payment tomorrow. There was a brief silence. "Tonight," he repeated. "Is everything okay?" "It will be," I answered honestly. Then I hesitated. "Can I ask you a favor?" "Depends on the favor," he said, but gently. "When my boyfriend comes back here, Daniel, you'll probably hear from him. I think he believes this is his apartment. There's been some misunderstanding about that. Could you leave a written note for him? Just something that clearly states that the lease has always been in my name, that I exercised the early termination clause, and that any arrangement moving forward would need to be between you and him directly?" Stanley exhaled slowly, the sound crackling through the line. "I can do that," he said. "The lease is under your name only, Pauline. That's what matters. I'll put it in writing and leave it inside the unit, like a formal notice." "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate it." After we hung up, I took one last slow look around the apartment. The couch where I'd sat through countless Marvel marathons because that's what he wanted to watch. The kitchen island where I'd cooked elaborate dinners he'd barely look up from his phone to eat. The gallery wall I'd spent a weekend arranging, while he played online with friends and occasionally shouted suggestions from the bedroom. It was amazing how different everything looked once you stripped the story away. I wheeled my suitcases to the door, turned off the lights, and locked up behind me. The key clicked solidly in the deadbolt. In the elevator, under the harsh fluorescent lighting, I caught my reflection again. My eyes were tired, but there was something else there too, something like resolve. I drove across town to my new place, the GPS guiding me, even though I'd already memorized the turn-by-turn weeks ago. The building was quieter, older. No polished concrete hallways or trendy lobby art. Just beige walls, a slightly squeaky staircase, and the faint scent of someone's laundry detergent. I unlocked my door. No shared key, no shared narrative. Just one lock, one owner of the story on the other side. Inside, the apartment was mostly empty. A mattress on the floor where the bed frame would go tomorrow. A couple of boxes with kitchen basics. The small table I'd had delivered earlier, just in case. I set my suitcases by the wall and sat on the bare mattress, shoes still on. The silence wrapped around me. Not cold, just honest. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt safe. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me. 1:38 a.m. "Daniel, where did you go?" I watched the dots blink as he typed again. Another message. "Pauline, this isn't funny. Everyone's asking where you are." Then, "Are you seriously pouting over a joke? Grow up and come home." I didn't respond. I placed the phone face down. 10 minutes later, it buzzed again. Then again. Confusion turned to irritation. Irritation to outright rage. The messages piled up. Accusations, demands, half-hearted apologies, then more insults when I didn't engage. At some point, Stanley must have dropped off the notice and done his final walkthrough, because the tone of the text shifted abruptly. "What the hell is this lease notice? Are you insane? You can't just kick me out of my place." I lay there on the mattress in the semi-dark, listening to my new refrigerator hum and my old life implode in real time, one notification at a time. By morning, I had 53 text messages and 29 missed calls. By noon, the numbers would be higher, the insults sharper, the accusations more dramatic. But lying there in that empty room, staring at the ceiling, I realized something simple and undeniable. He might think the apartment was his. The lease and my future said otherwise. By 7 a.m., my phone had become a war zone. I woke to the screen lighting up and vibrating against the hardwood floor every few seconds. Dozens of missed calls, a chain of messages so long I had to scroll, and 3 new voicemails with the little red dots that felt like alarms. I sat up on the mattress, hair tangled, throat dry, and stared at the glowing rectangle as if it were someone else's problem. Then I did something Daniel never expected. I didn't panic. I documented. I took screenshots of everything, every insult, every pleading line, every accusation, even the timestamps. It was strangely methodical, like sealing away artifacts from the end of a long, strange era. The last message he'd sent in the night was at 4:52 a.m. "Daniel, you left me homeless. What kind of person does that?" Homeless. In the apartment he never paid for. In the home he weaponized against me. I blocked his number after the final screenshot. The silence that followed felt like a freshly opened window. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since appetizers at the party. I made toast in my new kitchen, buttering it with the dull knife I'd tossed in a box, and nearly laughed at how domestic the moment felt, like a normal morning in a normal life, until my phone rang again. "Mike," I answered immediately. "Pauline, what the hell happened? Daniel is telling everyone you abandoned him and left him stranded at your place." "Your place." The words hit me like warm sunlight. Mike, I said, sitting on the counter like I'd done in his old dorm room, I need you to sit down. He did. I heard the chair scrape. I told him everything. Not dramatically, not angrily, just truth, piece by piece. Daniel's public humiliation speech, his exit strategy phone call months earlier, the lease revelation, my quiet planning, and last night's move. There was a long silence. Then Mike exhaled sharply. Jesus Christ, Pauline, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. You weren't supposed to, I said gently. He was careful. No, no, his voice hardening. He's a piece of... I heard Emma in the background. Put it on speaker, she said. Then, louder. Pauline, sweetheart, we are on your side. I wanted to throw my drink in his face last night. A soft laugh escaped me. You and me both. Emma's voice dropped into that tone. Protective, big sister energy she rarely used. But when she did, the earth moved. He came to our house this morning, she said. My heart stopped. What? At 8, she continued, banging on the door like a lunatic. He said you were missing and he needed your address. Mike snorted in the background, as if we'd ever give him that. Emma added, I told him if he didn't leave immediately, I'd call the police. He left. Heat flooded my face. Anger, gratitude, disbelief. I'm so sorry he dragged you into this, I whispered. Don't apologize, Emma said. We're your friends. Protecting you isn't a chore. I swallowed hard. That was the first time that morning I felt the sting of tears. After we hung up, I finally opened my front door to grab the small potted plant Emma insisted I take when I signed the new lease. It had survived the move better than I expected. Then my phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Hello? A long breath, then, this is Colleen from your building's security office. My spine tightened. Is everything okay? I asked. I thought you should know, she said carefully, that a man matching the description of, your former partner tried to enter your workplace lobby this morning. He caused a scene when reception wouldn't buzz him up. My jaw clenched. Did he say what he wanted? Yes. He said he needed to talk to you. Security escorted him out. I closed my eyes. Colleen continued. Your manager has asked that you take a few personal days. They're instructing reception not to let him through under any circumstances. Embarrassment, relief, fear, gratitude. All of it hit me at once. Thank you, I said, for telling me. We're here if you need anything, she added. Seriously. I ended the call and sat down at the tiny table in my new kitchen. That was when the first crack in my emotional armor appeared. I put my face in my hands and let myself feel it, just for a minute. Not the humiliation, not the betrayal, but the exhaustion. 3 years of walking on eggshells. 3 years of being too much, or too emotional, or too sensitive. 3 years of being told I misunderstood jokes that landed like arrows. The worst part wasn't the insults at the party. It was how unsurprised I'd been. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. I froze. Then I saw the preview. Mom, Daniel just showed up at our house. A cold ripple moved through my chest. I opened the message in full. Mom, he said you're in crisis and he needs help. I invited him inside to hear him out. Call me. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Because my mother is kind. Too kind. The type of person who thinks everyone means well if you just let them talk long enough. Daniel could manipulate kindness the same way a thief manipulates a lock. I hit call. She answered on the first ring. Sweetheart? Mom, is he still there? No, she said. He left 10 minutes ago. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I told him, she continued, her voice firmer now, that if he contacts you again, through us or otherwise, I will call the police for harassment. I blinked. You said that? Yes. A pause. Pauline, I don't like how he spoke about you. Or how he spoke to me. I never trusted his smile, too rehearsed. I laughed softly, disbelief mixing with relief. Thank you, I said, really. Come home any time, she replied. We're on your side, always. After we ended the call, I leaned back in my chair, staring at the small cracks in the ceiling paint, feeling my pulse finally start to slow. For the first time since leaving the party, it struck me. Daniel wasn't spiraling because I left. He was spiraling because he'd lost control of the narrative. And people like him don't handle losing control well. I thought briefly that the chaos might die down now that my family and friends were pushing back. But I was wrong. The next mask was about to fall, and this time it wouldn't be his. It would belong to the woman he said was just a work friend. Stop. Bandanai, continue ChatGPT Danai, Part 4, Who He Really Was and Who I Let Myself Be. The email came that evening. I was sitting on the floor of my new apartment, knees tucked to my chest, laptop balanced against a cardboard box labeled kitchen-ish, when I saw it appear in my inbox. From Julia Thompson. Subject: I think you need to see this. My stomach dropped. Julia. The on track for regional manager. Real ambition. Just a work friend. Julia. I hesitated for a full minute before opening it. Hi, Pauline. You don't know me personally, but my name is Julia. I'm on the marketing team. I didn't know you and Daniel were still together. He told me you two broke up months ago. I feel sick writing this. He mentioned your name today. Said you exploded out of nowhere and were using the apartment situation to punish him. Something felt off. A coworker pulled me aside after the scene he made in the lobby this morning and told me his version didn't line up with, well, anything. I confronted him and he finally admitted you were still together until recently. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. He lied. I thought you should see some of our conversations so you know the truth. Screenshots attached. Julia. My hands trembled as I clicked on the first image. And then the next. And the next. Daniel had been messaging her late at night, calling her his motivation, saying they had chemistry, that she challenged him in ways his girlfriend never could, that he was single again soon. Soon. During the months he was still sleeping next to me. One screenshot made my jaw tighten. Daniel. Hannah was the same way. Needy. Dramatic. Pauline is at least quieter about it, but she's not my long-term match either. Hannah. His ex-girlfriend. He always described her as crazy, obsessed, pathetic. He painted her as the villain in every story. Now, reading the tone of these messages, the pattern was clear. Public charm, private contempt, repeated cycles of devalue, replace, rewrite history. A shiver ran up my arms. I wrote back, Hi, Julia. Thank you for sending this. I believe you. You didn't do anything wrong. He did. And you deserve better than to be pulled into his lies. Pauline. Within minutes, she replied, If there's anything you need from me, even a statement for your workplace, I'm here. I'm really sorry. I believed her. For the first time since this mess started, someone connected to Daniel wasn't defending him. Someone saw him clearly. I closed my laptop and sat back against the box, feeling a strange mixture of vindication and grief. Because even though I'd left him, my body was still carrying the memory of believing him. Every gaslight, every dismissal, every little rewiring of reality he'd done over the years. I opened my voice notes app. My therapist had asked me to record thoughts instead of letting them spin silently. So I hit record. He minimized me, I said aloud, staring at the shadow of the kitchen counter, stretching across the floor. He turned me into a smaller version of myself piece by piece until I couldn't tell where his voice ended and mine began, and I let him. That's the part that hurts. I paused, but I see it now. I ended the recording. That's when my phone buzzed. Another email, this time from Daniel. The subject line was as predictable as it was infuriating. We need to talk. I clicked it. Pauline, I want to clear the air. Everything that happened at the party was a joke. Everyone knew it. You embarrassed yourself by overreacting. I'm willing to forgive you walking out like that. People make mistakes when they're emotional. Julia means nothing. She's a flirt, and it didn't mean anything. I told her that. You're blowing a joke way out of proportion. None of this is serious enough to end a relationship over. I've always seen a future with you, but you need to get your emotions under control before we can talk about long-term plans. Call me so we can fix this. Daniel. Fix. A word he used like a wrench. Cold, mechanical, transactional. My breath came out in a slow, controlled exhale. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was done. I clicked reply. Attached one single audio file, recording exit timeline M4A, the one I'd saved 3 months ago, the one where he told his sister he'd leave me after bonus season, the one where he laughed about me being useful until then. In the body of the email, I typed nothing. I hit send, a clean break, a quiet end. I closed my laptop and let the silence of the apartment settle around me. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for the next outburst, the next insult, the next small cut disguised as concern. I was free. But the story wasn't over. Because Daniel wasn't the only person who needed to be confronted. There was still the matter of the apartment, the final legal steps, and the truth I needed to face about my own patterns, not just his. I didn't know it yet, but the next 10 days would bring clarity I had been avoiding for years, and a moment I never expected. A message from someone I thought I'd never hear from again. But that comes later. For now, the only thing I felt as I lay back on the floor, staring at the ceiling, was this. Peace. Real, unshakable peace. The kind that comes only after the mask finally falls, for him and for me. Daniel didn't reply that night. Not to the audio file, not to the silence that followed, not to the truth I'd placed in his inbox like a mirror he couldn't escape. For a man who could spin a story out of thin air and rage at a locked door, the audio was the one thing he couldn't argue with. His own voice had cornered him. By the next morning, I expected an explosion. More messages, more accusations, more theatrics. Instead, I woke to nothing. Total, absolute quiet. People think silence is peaceful. But if you've ever been with someone who thrives on chaos, silence can feel like the eye of a hurricane, a pause before debris flies. I made coffee in my new tiny kitchen and waited. Still nothing. Around noon, I got an email. Not from Daniel. From Stanley, my landlord. Hi, Pauline. Wanted to update you. Daniel moved out yesterday afternoon. He tried to argue that he'd been the primary resident and had equitable rights to the unit. I showed him the lease and your termination notice. He left in under 10 minutes. Keys returned. Unit is now vacated and secured. Let me know if you need copies of anything for your records. Best Stanley. I stared at the screen, a little stunned. Daniel, the man who strutted through that apartment like he owned every wall, had walked out without a fight once someone presented him with the one thing he couldn't charm, bully, or manipulate. Paperwork. A signature. The truth in writing. I forwarded the email to myself twice for safekeeping and smiled. Not a triumphant smile, not even a relieved one. Just quiet satisfaction. It was finally over, or so I thought. Not even an hour later, my phone buzzed with a call from Mom. Sweetheart, she said, her voice bright in a way I hadn't heard in years. Your father and I just wanted to say, well done. I blinked. For what? For getting out, she replied simply. Your dad said, and I quote, took her long enough. A laugh escaped me. A real one. The kind I hadn't let myself feel around Daniel. Mom continued. He also said if that man ever sets foot near you again, he'll personally escort him to the police station. I pinched the bridge of my nose, smiling. Please tell Dad not to go looking for him. Oh, he won't. She paused. But he's proud of you. We both are. You chose yourself. Chose myself. The words landed deep. After we hung up, I sat on the floor again. The same place I'd opened Julia's email, the same spot I'd sent Daniel the recording, and let those words settle in my chest like warm stones. But later that evening, something happened that shifted everything once more. My email pinged. Subject: Apologies and proof from Jason Marketing. For a moment, I thought it was spam. But no, Jason, the man Daniel had bragged about at the party, the regional manager he'd claimed was flirting with him. I opened it. Hi, Pauline. I'm really sorry to message you out of the blue, but I thought you would want this. I had no idea Daniel was with someone. He told me he was single. He's been talking to me for weeks. When I found out what happened at the engagement party and what he's been spreading, I felt sick. I'm sending screenshots of everything on my end so you know the truth. I'm sorry you were dragged into this. You didn't deserve it. Jason, the screenshots were exactly what I expected. Daniel complaining about me. Daniel flirting. Daniel suggesting he would upgrade his dating pool soon. Daniel painting himself as a victim of a clingy, boring girlfriend stuck in routine. But what hit me hardest wasn't the messages themselves. It was that a complete stranger had more honesty and integrity in his pinky finger than Daniel had in his entire body. I replied simply, Thank you, Jason. I appreciate the honesty. Take care of yourself. Pauline. When I closed my laptop, the sun was setting. A warm, honey-colored light spilling across the bare floor. The kind of light that makes everything look softer, even endings. I'd been in survival mode for so long that stillness felt foreign. So I did something ordinary. I laced up my shoes and took a walk. No destination, no timeline, no one waiting to criticize how long I was gone. Just me. I walked past a small park, watching a toddler chase a bubble, past a cafe Daniel always called overpriced hipster nonsense, past a mural of a phoenix rising out of flames. I stopped and stared at it longer than I meant to. A woman pushing a stroller paused beside me. Beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, I murmured. It really is. When I got back to my apartment, a voicemail from my therapist waited. Pauline, I know this week has been intense. Remember, trauma isn't just what happens. It's what you carry afterward. Be gentle with yourself. I sat on the edge of the mattress, still on the floor, and finally allowed myself to feel something I hadn't tasted in years. Hope. Not for a new relationship, not for some dramatic redemption arc. Just hope for me. For the version of myself I hadn't seen in a long time. Unapologetic, clear-eyed, steady. The next day, I met Mike and Emma for lunch. They hugged me like someone returning from a long trip instead of a messy breakup. Emma squeezed my hands across the table. You look lighter. I feel lighter, I admitted. Mike raised his glass. To Pauline for choosing self-respect. We clinked glasses. And something inside me unknotted. Later that week, when I felt ready, I went on a casual coffee date. Nothing serious. Just conversation, laughter, awkward smiles. A reminder that normal, respectful interaction exists. But the most surprising moment came one quiet afternoon, 10 days after the engagement party. I was cleaning up when I got an email notification. No subject line, no name, just an address I recognized. Hannah, Daniel's ex. My breath hitched. I clicked. Pauline. You don't know me, but I heard what happened. It wasn't just you. He did the same things to me. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're not the problem. He is. If you ever need someone who understands, I'm here. Hannah. I closed the laptop slowly. For a long time, I just sat there, feeling seen by a stranger who had lived my story before me. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of forgetting myself. I exhaled, long and steady, like letting go of years I didn't realize I'd been holding in. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt free. Truly, completely free.